Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. The President of the United States of America is calling for a 30 days unconditional ceasefire. Well, he can call, but the Russians have other ideas, or different ideas about it. And they do exactly what Zelensky did with the Russian proposed 3 days ceasefire during the parades or at least the commemorations in Moscow, which is, no, let's talk like the Ukrainians talk, and that is, let's solve the root causes of this war. So before we have to have a ceasefire, let's discuss those things. China joins Russia. From now on, it's very clear, should be very clear, for the guys in the West that they are not dealing with Russia. This is something I said for at least 2 years. I've been saying, and that is, they are in an alliance, and I'm waiting for the right time when the Chinese and the Russians will show up and say, actually, ta-da, we are together, and if you want to talk to me, you talk to us. Like, the European Union and so on. In the same time, as these guys are trying to figure out how they can stop this war, we have the imbeciles in Germany, we have the imbeciles in Great Britain, and they say that, no, we need to impose a peace on Russia. That is, they still think they are at the driver's seat, and they're not. They're just delusional. So I have a few articles here ready for you to show you how this ceasefire could be implemented, or what is the Ukrainian reaction, what is the Russian reaction to it, and if could be implemented or not. Remember, if you have a broken hose or pipe in your house and the water comes in, you're not going to rush to get some duct tape and wrap it around it, or get some paper towels or some towels and a bucket and just squeegees and all that. You go to the root cause, which is the water comes from outside of your house, from the main pipe or whatever you have, a well, and you go over there to the faucet or whatever it is and you do this. Squeak, 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 and that's it. And then you come and solve the problem in the territory. So in order to do that, you have to solve the root causes, or at least agree to them, and the Russians said that they will not fall for words anymore. Well, that's a change, good for you. So let's start with Donald Trump, who spoke over the phone with Zelensky. So the first article comes from Ukr War. It is from the 9th of May, which is today, 2025. Trump calls for 30-day unconditional ceasefire following phone call with Zelensky. Well, as much as he would like to portray himself as the mediator, he is Zelensky's sponsor to a certain extent. So he's not a mediator. A mediator usually is a country or person, an entity that has no dog in the fight, or is, I'm to a certain extent and can put pressure on, or has an ear to the both sides. Well, the United States of America turned its back on the Russians for some time. So now they try to build back trust, or at least, communication, which is fantastic. It's fantastic. On the other hand, you are not neutral. You are part of the problem. You maybe are the main problem with your NATO. But the West does not want to accept that. They know it. But in their delusion, and I would say maybe some hatred towards the Russians, they don't want to even hear about it. It's exactly what they did in 2021, in October, November, December, and January 2022, when the Russians tried to prevent what's going on over here and came and said, NATO, let's talk. And NATO said, we're not the problem. You are the problem because you are too strong. And unless you are weak and you give us everything we want for our interests that use us to get you, we're not going to talk to you. And that's how the whole thing started. The US president has called for a 30-day ceasefire between Ukraine and Russia, emphasizing that it must pave the way for a lasting peace agreement. Okay, you say peace agreement, but you have this. Ukr War, this imbecile. Germany, European Union, United States of America ready to increase pressure on Russia to advance peace in Ukraine. This guy. So, how do you think the peace will look? How do you think? And then, let me show you more. From New Voice of Ukraine, read this headline right here. Don't worry, I will read it for you. Stepping up pressure on Putin. This is the Prime Minister of Great Britain. UK unveils biggest sanctions package against Russia. And I'm going to show you this right here. Lines drawn. NATO gears up for defense pledges and Ukraine focus. So, how do you think that peace will look like for the Russians? And since the Russians are not in Germany's First World War situation, why would they agree? On the contrary. So these guys are delusional by saying we are in charge of you and we demand, but hey, it's for a lasting peace. How do you think that lasting peace will look? For the Russians, at least. Alright, so let's read further the first article. According to Ukr War, President Donald Trump wrote this on his social media platform following a phone conversation with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky, as I said many times before, he is Ukrainian as I am Zimbabwean. All right. Talks with Russia/Ukraine continue. The US calls for, ideally, a 30-day unconditional ceasefire. Hopefully, an acceptable ceasefire will be observed. Okay, Trump noted. If this does not happen, the United States and its partners will impose further sanctions, he has said. So, right here, why would the Russians talk to you? They're not losing. They just announced together with Xi Jinping and China that actually we are together. We have an steel alliance here, and you're done. You're toast. We can live with the rest of the world without you, dying whores in the beds. All right, it's European Union at least. United States of America is getting that way. Thousands of soldiers, Okay, I will stay committed to securing peace between Russia and Ukraine. Then tell Ukraine to do this and you do that, and then there's going to be peace if you're committed. You're not committed. You want peace on your terms, and the Russians want peace on their terms. So what do? You negotiate, right? And if you can't negotiate, what are you going to do? Try to knock me out. And I try to knock you out, right? What are we going to do? So it has to be some give and take. And how do you look at that? Okay, what are the root causes? Okay, what do you think is a problem? And you tell me this is my problem. Okay, this is my problem with you. Now, do you think that those problems are so fundamental that cannot have us have peace? I think from NATO's perspective, no, you can't. Why? We are NATO, we do whatever we want, and we will not share with you this. And we're going to take over it, including China. And the Russian says, okay, you see, that's the problem. That's the problem. And we're not going to allow that to happen. All right, let's go to the next article that I have here from Russia Today. Trump calls for unconditional ceasefire in Ukraine. Again, the US president has urged a longer truce amid Kiev's reported refusal to even observe a 72-hour pause unilaterally declared by Moscow, even if the Russians violated or not. The Ukrainians, Zelensky that is, because he's Ukrainian, said no, we don't want that. We want, so that's the way, it's like the pipe. The Russians said, you know what, guys, the water is coming into our building, and we're going to all get wet here. So what should we do? And the Russian says, well, in order to do that, let's walk towards the downstairs in the basement and turn that faucet. But in order to do that, let's clean a little bit. The Ukrainians said, no, don't clean anything. Don't clean. Bring the buckets. If you don't bring the buckets, don't clean anything before you bring the buckets. Don't bring the towels. Bring the buckets first. Yeah, but that's gonna help. Let's go and turn that off. So you're okay with the buckets, but not with the squeegees or with the towels? Was it the 3-day ceasefire proposed by the Russians? I don't know if it was implemented or not. They say it was. The Ukrainians say no. Was it a bad idea? No. So what's the difference between, the big difference between 3 and 30? It's not just 10 times different. It is by the same thing. You don't take it. You don't take it. Baby steps to get to the, no. It's just some people do not want peace. That's for sure. And those have power. Some people over there don't want that. Anyway, let's go to the next one. And this is Ukraine's reaction to the 30-day ceasefire proposed by the war party, United States of America, party to the war. The same team. Ukraine ready for immediate ceasefire, says Zelensky. Okay, excellent, my friends, excellent. The Ukrainian leader, because he's Ukrainian, these are imbeciles from Russia today, okay, has called for the hostilities to be stopped for at least 30 days after a phone call with US President Donald Trump. Now, I know why these guys are calling Zelensky Ukrainian. I know that because Russia is a Russian federation. They call themselves multicultural. So they are afraid to make distinctions. Actually, that's a guy like that. It's a guy like that. They want to be, okay, that's fine. I understand that. The problem is you have examples. You have examples in history. When you have countries with multicultural countries, right? I'm going to give you 2 examples. Yugoslavia, and then you have Czechoslovakia. They disintegrated on their own. Why? Because they didn't like to be together. They want to be alone. I want my family, you with your family. Now we're not together here in a, you know what I mean? All right, so Zelensky is okay with that, right here. Ukrainian leader has announced that Kiev is ready for a complete ceasefire without any preconditions. Now, I want to ask you, why? Why would 30 days do? Okay, stop the killing. And then what do we do in that time? We get some rest, we bring some weapons, we rearrange, and after 30 days, what do we do? Do we start over? So what does that do for the lasting peace? Besides, the Russians are not going to do that since they go to the root cause. They want to go to the basement and turn that faucet off. These guys, no, there's no problem in the basement. Let's use the buckets. The water is coming into the building. You say, okay, I just wanted to use the, how do you call it, the towel so it doesn't get everything flooded here. No, we don't bring towels. We're going to bring only buckets. Okay, let's go to the second topic, which is China. I made a video yesterday, actually I posted it today, where China and Russia declared, Xi Jinping and Putin declared that they have a alliance of steel. And it's clear we're together here, and that's it. Dropped all the pretenses and all that. And why? Because this is what Xi Jinping says. Xi Jinping supports Putin's position on war against Ukraine. What does that mean? And I'm going to show you. These guys put it in the quotation marks right there. Root causes. In a joint statement following talks, Xi Jinping and Putin stated that the war in Ukraine could only be resolved by removing its root causes. You see this? The war in Ukraine could only be resolved. Could only. We're going to resolve it if we go in the basement and turn off that faucet. Forget about the squeegee, forget about the bucket, even forget about the temporary towel or the energy or anything. Got it? The West, no. They all know. That's why they came and said unjustified Russian invasion of Ukraine. And what was the other one? Unjustifiable, yeah. Unjustifiable. And the other one was illegal and all that, and unprovoked. I think it was provoked by NATO. But hey, that's me. You can have a different opinion, but reality is not based on opinion, but on reality. On a fact. Reality is based on reality. Great job, Emil. You can quote me good. You can put a t-shirt. Reality could be based on reality. All right. I won't edit that anyway. All right. So sometimes you say things that... Anyway, so here it is. The reality is the root causes are root causes of the conflict. And these guys ignore that. And then we have Donald Trump, who says this regarding China. He's delusional as well, right here. Trump says he will ask China to help with Ukraine conflict resolution. Do you read here? Xi Jinping calls for root causes of Ukraine conflict to be eliminated. Or if you want, these guys right here, you got it. And Trump says, I will talk to China to help Ukraine conflict resolution. You don't have to call the Chinese. They outsmarted you together with the Russians. You're talking to them right now because you can't beat them. That's the only reason why the US now is mediating, because it's not eager to go head on fighting the Russians. And in the proxy war, they either get it a little bit bigger, but they're going to lose. The Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, already the allies, because we are the Axis. Have you noticed that the Axis are already bad, always bad, but the allies are already good? Whenever you find out, you can't call, allies, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, China, India, and Russia. You can't call them the allies. Only we are the allies. They are something else. The axis of whatever and whatever. So this guy thinks that he's going to solve it. The problem is you point out the right problem. Yes, and here is a mirror. Yeah, not him per se. The US president believes Beijing can help bring the positions of Moscow and Kiev closer, making peace talks possible. Okay, he's a retard. He doesn't understand this. And in the meantime, well, he says that, and when they say that, this is the West. The root cause. The West is aggressive advance towards Russia. You can call it by the Russian standard. You can say, no, we're okay, we're good, we're friends. But you come with a knife. We're friends. Don't worry. Here is what they say. And I already showed you this article, but I have two more. Germany, European Union, United States, ready to increase pressure on Russia to advance peace in Ukraine. This is when the peace is going to be achieved. This is when the peace will be achieved. Root causes. Next, I showed you these guys here. NATO prepares, and this baboon with, it's just an opossum. This guy, Starmer, with his British bankrupted country, they think they still have it. They don't have it. Time flew by. You screwed yourself with the Second World War. But after the Second World War, you lost your colonies. You became bankrupt, but you created a country of, you know what country? Yeah, 1948. Good job, man. Good job. And so the whole Europe was fantastically destroyed because, you had two idiots over there. We are the allies. One idiot being Adolf, the other one being partly Stalin. Stalin was good until those guys were in power. When Stalin became a little bit looking for a purge, he had a mini stroke in March 5th, 1953. That's when he died, but he got a stroke, 2 days before that, and nobody touched him. They let him die in his own vomit and piss and poop. By whom? By some medics. Go and check their names. All right, then see where Beria was at that time. So here is, my friends. Trump wants a ceasefire. They ignore the root causes. The root causes were clearly explained by the Russians for the last time in January 2022. Explained clearly. They talked to Blinken. Lavrov, the foreign minister of the Russian Federation, spoke with the Jewish Secretary of State of the United States of America, Antony Blinken, and he explained, man, these are the root causes. Let's talk. Give us law-binding, legal binding guarantees. You're not going to do anything. They were not eager to do that. And the Russian says, okay, that's it. You're on my porch. I'm going to kick you over the Atlantic, all of you. And it's the Russians. They try there. Here is where we are. Until these guys, and they speak from a position of, we're going to impose more sanctions. Yeah, I think so. Great Britain is going to do this. Germany too. Yeah, we have to increase pressure on Russia, and then we're going to have a lasting peace. How do you think that lasting peace will look? All right, for the Russians. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.